Law of Attraction Secrets: How Manifestation Really Works and How to Manifest Money, Love, and Your Dream Life Faster Than You Thought Possible, by Vivian Crane. Introduction. The wind off the East River was cold on that autumn night in 1908. A young man named Napoleon Hill stood outside a massive mansion in New York, his hands shaking as he adjusted his coat. He was a struggling journalist, and he was about to interview the richest man in the world, Andrew Carnegie. Hill didn't have much. He had a notebook, a few pens, and a lot of debt. He expected a quick 20-minute talk about how to make money. He thought Carnegie would tell him to work hard and save his pennies. Instead, Carnegie sat him down by a roaring fire and talked for 3 straight days. Carnegie didn't talk about steel or factories. He talked about the power of the human mind. He told the young reporter that most people are like drifters on a boat with no oars. They go wherever the wind blows them. If the wind is bad, they crash. If the wind is good, they survive. But they never truly steer the ship. Near the end of their 3rd day together, Carnegie did something strange. He pulled out a stopwatch. He looked Hill in the eye and issued a challenge. "I want you to spend the next 20 years of your life interviewing the most successful people in the world," Carnegie said. "I want you to find the laws they use to create their lives. I won't pay you a cent for your time. I will only give you the introductions you need. You have 60 seconds to decide, yes or no." Hill felt his heart thumping against his ribs. He had no money. He had no job security. Taking this offer seemed like a recipe for starvation. But something deep inside him clicked. He saw the stopwatch ticking. He saw the look of total confidence on Carnegie's face. Hill said yes in exactly 29 seconds. That moment changed everything. It led to the most famous book on success ever written. More importantly, it pulled back the curtain on a secret that the world's most powerful people had known for centuries. They weren't just lucky. They weren't just hard workers. They were using a specific set of mental tools to pull the things they wanted out of thin air and into their physical hands. The secret language of the universe. Most of us grew up believing that life is something that happens to us. We think we are at the mercy of the economy, our boss, our DNA, or just plain old bad luck. We wake up, look at the weather, look at our bank account, and let those things decide if it's going to be a good day or a bad day. When things go wrong, we feel like a victim. When a bill comes in that we can't pay, we feel a knot of anxiety in our stomach. When a person we love leaves us, we feel like we aren't enough. We spend our lives reacting. We are like a radio that is stuck on a static-filled station, and we think the static is the only music that exists. The truth is much more exciting. You are not a passenger on this boat. You are the one holding the blueprints. The law of attraction is often talked about as if it's magic or wishing on a star. People think if they just think about a Ferrari for 5 minutes, one will appear in their driveway. When it doesn't show up, they say, "See, this stuff doesn't work." But the law of attraction isn't magic. It is mechanics. It is a law of nature, just like gravity. If you drop a pen, it hits the floor. It doesn't matter if you are a good person or a bad person. It doesn't matter if you are happy or sad. The law of gravity always works. The law of attraction works the same way. It is the law of like attracts like. Every thought you have is a vibration. Every emotion you feel is a frequency. The universe is like a giant mirror that reflects back to you whatever you are sending out. If you are sending out, "I am broke and worried," the universe reflects back more things for you to be worried about. If you are sending out, "I am grateful and abundant," the universe reflects back more things to be grateful for. This isn't just a nice thought. It's a fact of how our world is built. We have been taught to work from the outside in. We try to change our bank account so we can feel rich. We try to find a partner so we can feel loved. But the laws of manifestation work from the inside out. You must feel rich to attract money. You must feel loved to attract a soulmate. The science of the maybe. If this sounds too dreamy for you, consider a story from the 1950s. A doctor named Henry Beecher was treating soldiers during World War II. He ran out of morphine, which is a very strong painkiller. He didn't want the soldiers to panic, so he decided to try something. He injected them with a simple saltwater solution. But he told them it was morphine. To his shock, the soldiers' pain went away. Their bodies reacted as if they had actually received the drug. Their minds believed they were healing, so their bodies created the chemicals needed to stop the pain. This is called the placebo effect. It proves that your brain doesn't always know the difference between what is happening and what you believe is happening. When you change your internal belief, your physical reality has to follow. Your brain has a special filter called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. Think of it as a bouncer at a club. There are millions of bits of information hitting your senses every second. If your brain tried to process all of them, it would melt. So the RAS only lets in what it thinks is important to you. If you decide you want to buy a specific red car, you suddenly start seeing that red car everywhere. Did everyone in town go out and buy that car overnight? No, those cars were always there. Your RAS was just filtering them out. Once you told your brain that the red car was important, the bouncer started letting that information in. Manifestation is the process of training your bouncer to look for opportunities, money, and love, instead of looking for problems, debt, and loneliness. A quiet morning in Seattle. In a small, one-bedroom apartment in Seattle, the rain was tapping against the glass. It was 6:30 a.m., and Elena Vance was staring at a piece of paper on her kitchen counter. It had a bright red stamp on it. Final notice. Elena was 34 years old. She had a job as a marketing manager at a tech firm, but it felt like her soul was being slowly drained away by a vacuum. She spent her days in a gray cubicle, making spreadsheets for people who didn't know her name. She owed $15,000 on her credit cards. Every time her phone buzzed, she felt a jolt of fear, thinking it was a debt collector. She lived with a grumpy, demanding cat named Barnaby, who was currently meowing for breakfast, unaware that his human was about to have a breakdown. Elena used to be a dreamer. In college, she wanted to be a creative director. She wanted to travel. She wanted to find someone who looked at her like she was the only person in the room. But after a series of bad breakups and a mountain of bills, she had retired from dreaming. She told herself she was being realistic. "Success is a lottery, Barnaby," she whispered as she poured the last of the coffee. "And I just didn't get a ticket." As she reached for her mug, she bumped a stack of old mail. A dusty, thin book fell out from the bottom of the pile. It was a book on manifestation her aunt had given her years ago. Elena had never read it. She used to think it was woo-woo nonsense for people who didn't want to work hard. She picked it up, ready to toss it in the trash, but then she looked at the bill on the counter. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders, a woman who had given up. "I have nothing left to lose," she muttered. She sat down at her small kitchen table and opened to the first page. She didn't know it yet, but the radio dial of her life was about to be turned for the very first time. What this book will do for you. The journey Elena is about to go on is the same one you are starting right now. This book isn't just a collection of stories. It is a manual for your new life. We are going to move away from being a passive observer. That is the person who waits for things to get better. We are going to become an intentional architect. That is the person who decides what they want and uses the laws of the universe to build it. By the time you finish these chapters, you will understand the physics of thought, how your brain actually communicates with the world around you. The F3 framework, why focus isn't enough, and how feeling and faith are the missing keys to making things happen fast. The subconscious blueprint, how to find the hidden software in your brain that is sabotaging your bank account and your relationships. The art of detachment, the strange secret of why wanting something too much actually pushes it away, and how to let go to let it in. The 7-minute ritual, a simple daily practice that ensures you stay on the right frequency no matter what is happening in the world. We will look at the lives of people like Nikola Tesla, who understood that everything is energy. We will learn from Florence Scovel Shinn, who showed us how the words we speak act like a magic wand for our future. We will even see how the greatest scientists of the 1920s proved that the observer actually changes the experiment. You are the observer. Your life is the experiment. The choice. Andrew Carnegie gave Napoleon Hill 60 seconds to decide his future. I am asking you to make a similar choice, but without the ticking clock. You can keep doing what you have been doing. You can keep working hard, worrying about the future, and hoping that someday things will change. But if you keep tuning into the same radio station, you are always going to hear the same music. Or you can decide that today is the day you learn how to turn the dial. You don't need to have a lot of money to start. You don't need to have a perfect life. You just need a little bit of curiosity and the willingness to believe that there is more to this world than what you can see with your eyes. Elena is waiting at her kitchen table. Barnaby is finally quiet. The rain is still falling in Seattle, but for the first time in years, the air in that small apartment feels electric. It is time to stop being a drifter and start being a creator. The laws are ready. The universe is listening. The door is open. Chapter 1. Is your mind tuning into the wrong station? Imagine two people standing on the same street corner in a busy city. It is a Tuesday morning, and the sky is a heavy, dull gray. Rain starts to fall, not a gentle mist, but a cold, soaking downpour that splashes off the sidewalk. The first person is named Leo. Leo looks at the clouds and sighs. To him, the rain is a personal attack. He thinks about his wet shoes, the traffic that will surely make him late, and how typical it is for his luck to turn sour on a day he has a big meeting. He is tuned into a very specific frequency. His internal radio is playing a station we might call K-LAC. The songs on this station are all about things going wrong, people being difficult, and the world being a hard place to live. Because he is listening to this music, he walks with his head down, shoulders hunched, and he doesn't notice the taxi that just emptied its seat right in front of him. He is too busy being frustrated. The second person is named Maya. She is standing 3 feet away from Leo. She sees the same gray sky and feels the same cold water. But Maya's internal radio is tuned to a different station. Let's call it WH Hope. She thinks about how the rain will finally wash away the dust from the city trees. She remembers she has a bright yellow umbrella in her bag that she loves. She feels a sense of calm, believing that everything usually works out. Because her head is up and her heart is open, she sees that empty taxi immediately. She whistles, the driver stops, and she is out of the rain in seconds. Both people were in the exact same spot. Both faced the same problem, but they were living in 2 completely different worlds because of the station they were tuned into. This isn't just a nice thought about being positive. It is a rule of how the world works. And the man who proved it most clearly didn't do it with a self-help book. He did it with a sledgehammer. The night the earth shook in Manhattan. In 1898, the police in New York City were used to strange things, but nothing prepared them for what happened on East Houston Street. Deep inside a brick building, a tall, thin man with piercing eyes and a sharp mustache was working in his laboratory. His name was Nikola Tesla. He was one of the greatest inventors to ever live, but that night, he almost became the man who accidentally knocked down a neighborhood. Tesla was fascinated by the idea that everything in the world is moving. Even things that look still, like a table, a wall, or a mountain, are actually made of tiny particles that are shaking very, very fast. This shaking is called vibration. Every object has its own natural vibration, a specific speed at which it likes to shake. Tesla had built a small device, no bigger than an alarm clock. It was a mechanical vibrator. He decided to see what would happen if he attached it to one of the giant iron pillars that held up his building. He turned the machine on and started to adjust the speed. At first, nothing happened. The machine just hummed quietly. But as Tesla turned the dial, the hum grew deeper. Suddenly, the windows in the room began to rattle. A few seconds later, the heavy equipment on his table started to dance. Tesla kept turning the dial, searching for the exact frequency of the building itself. When he found it, the world went crazy. The entire building began to heave and shake. 10 blocks away, the police station felt the floor roll like a boat on the ocean. People ran out into the streets, screaming that an earthquake was hitting New York. Inside the lab, the walls were cracking and the pipes were bursting. Tesla realized he had found the resonance of the building. By matching the vibration of his tiny machine to the vibration of the giant structure, the small energy of the device was multiplied 1,000,000 times. It was powerful enough to bring the whole place down. Just as the police burst through his door, Tesla picked up a sledgehammer and smashed his invention to pieces. The shaking stopped instantly. He later told friends that he could have dropped the Brooklyn Bridge into the river in minutes using that same little clock-sized tool. Tesla proved a secret that most people go their whole lives without knowing. Small vibrations can create massive physical results if they are in tune with what they are trying to move. The universe is not made of stuff. It is made of energy, and energy is always vibrating. Your thoughts are not just quiet ideas inside your head. They are electrical pulses. They are vibrations. When you think a thought, you are sending out a signal, just like Tesla's machine. If you want to change your life, you don't need to work harder or run faster. You need to change the dial on your internal machine, so you start vibrating at the same speed as the things you want to attract. The radio dial in your head. To understand how this works in your daily life, think about an old-fashioned radio. In the air all around you right now, there are hundreds of different sounds. There is rock music, there is news, there are people talking about the weather, and there are advertisements for car insurance. You can't hear any of them. To your ears, the room is silent. But that doesn't mean the music isn't there. It just means you aren't tuned to it. If you turn on a radio and set the dial to 101.5 FM, you will hear jazz. You won't hear the rock music playing on 92.3 FM. The rock music hasn't disappeared. It is still in the room with you. It is passing through your body right now. But because your radio is set to 101.5, the jazz is the only thing that becomes real for you. Your mind works exactly the same way. The world is full of stations. There is a station for wealth, a station for loneliness, a station for health, and a station for struggle. Most people are born into a family that listens to one specific station, and they stay tuned to it for their whole lives without realizing they have a choice. If you grew up hearing that money is hard to get, or people can't be trusted, your internal radio is likely stuck on a station of scarcity. And even though there are opportunities for success and love all around you, you can't hear them. They are like the rock music when you are tuned to jazz. They are there, but they aren't part of your reality. This is why some people seem to have all the luck. It isn't luck. They have simply tuned their dial to a frequency where luck is the only music playing. When they walk into a room, they see the person who can help them with their career. When they look at a problem, they see the solution. They aren't smarter than you. They are just on a different channel. Why the bridge fell down. Sometimes we need a bigger example to see how powerful this tuning really is. In 1940, engineers built a beautiful bridge in Washington state called the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It was made of thousands of tons of steel and concrete. It was built to be strong and sturdy. But one morning, the wind began to blow at about 42 miles per hour. This wasn't a hurricane. It was just a steady breeze. But the wind happened to hit the bridge at the exact frequency that matched the bridge's natural vibration. Because the wind and the bridge were in tune, a tiny bit of energy from the air began to push the massive steel structure. The bridge started to sway. Then it started to bounce. Within minutes, the heavy concrete road was twisting like a piece of ribbon. The bridge tore itself apart and fell into the water below. This happened because of something called resonance. It is the same reason a singer can break a wine glass by hitting a high note. The singer isn't hitting the glass with their hand. They are just matching the glass's vibration with their voice. When the vibrations match, the energy builds up until the physical object has to change. In your life, resistance is what happens when you try to manifest something while you are tuned to the wrong station. If you say, "I want to be rich," but your internal vibration is set to, "I am afraid of bills," you are out of tune. You are trying to play jazz on a rock station. It creates static. It feels like you are pushing against a wall. But when you learn to match your internal feeling to the thing you want, the wind of the universe starts to push you along, just like it moved that bridge. A rainy bus stop in Seattle. Elena Vance stood at the bus stop, feeling the damp cold seep through her thin coat. The bus was 10 minutes late, again. She had her headphones in, listening to a podcast about the new economic crisis. The host was talking about how the middle class was disappearing and how jobs were being replaced by machines. Elena felt a familiar weight in her chest. It was a heavy, dull ache that she had carried for years. It was the feeling of not enough. Not enough money for the rent. Not enough time to rest. Not enough love in her life. As she listened to the gloomy news, she looked at the people around her. Everyone looked just as miserable as she felt. They were all hunched over, staring at their phones, avoiding eye contact. She felt like she was trapped in a gray bubble. Then she remembered something she had read in a dusty book the night before. It was a quote by Tesla. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Elena looked at the gray sky. She thought about the radio station metaphor. What station am I on right now? She asked herself. The answer was obvious. She was on the doom and gloom show. She was vibrating at the frequency of struggle. And because she was on that station, She was noticing everything that was wrong. She noticed the trash in the gutter. She noticed the rude man who pushed past her. She noticed the cold. She decided to try a small experiment. She didn't try to manifest $1,000,000 right there at the bus stop. That felt too big, too out of tune. Instead, she just tried to change the song. She took out her headphones and turned off the podcast. She closed her eyes for a second and tried to find a feeling that was just one step higher than miserable. She thought about her cat, Barnaby, and how he purrs when he's happy. She hummed a little tune, a song her grandmother used to sing. It was a tiny shift, a small turn of the dial. But as she hummed, she felt the weight in her chest lighten, just a tiny bit. She opened her eyes and saw something she hadn't noticed before. Across the street, in the window of a small bakery, there was a bright red poster. It was an advertisement for a local art show. Elena used to love painting, but she hadn't picked up a brush in years. Seeing the poster gave her a tiny spark of excitement. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about the economic crisis. She was thinking about the color of the paint. The bus pulled up a moment later. As Elena stepped on, she didn't look at the floor. She looked at the driver and said, "Good morning," with a genuine smile. The driver, who usually looked grumpy, seemed surprised. He beamed back at her. "Morning. Great day for ducks, isn't it?" Elena sat down, feeling a strange sense of warmth. The world was still rainy. She was still $15,000 in debt. But the static in her head had cleared. She had moved the dial just a fraction of an inch, and already, the music was starting to change. The water that listens. You might be thinking, okay, it's nice to be positive, but does my vibration really change physical things? A scientist in Japan named Dr. Masaru Emoto wanted to find the answer to that question. He performed an experiment that shocked the world. He took samples of water and placed them in different bottles. On some bottles, he wrote kind, loving words like thank you and love. On other bottles, he wrote harsh, angry words like I hate you and fear. He then played different types of music for the water. Beautiful classical music for some, and loud, chaotic noise for others. After a while, he froze the water and looked at the ice crystals under a powerful microscope. The results were incredible. The water that had been tuned to love and beautiful music formed perfect, shimmering crystals that looked like diamonds or complex snowflakes. But the water that had been tuned to hate and noise didn't form crystals at all. It looked like a muddy, disorganized mess. It looked sick. Your body is about 70% water. If words and thoughts can change the physical shape of a water crystal in a bottle, imagine what they are doing to the water inside your cells. When you are tuned to the station of stress or anger, you are literally changing the physical structure of your body. You are creating muddy energy. But when you tune yourself to gratitude, you are turning your internal world into a masterpiece of perfect crystals. This is why manifestation isn't just wishing. It is a biological and physical process. You are the broadcaster and the receiver. You are the one who decides which crystals form in your life. The emotional guidance scale. So how do you know what station you are on? And more importantly, how do you change it? You don't need a microscope or a mechanical vibrator to find your frequency. You have a built-in tool that tells you exactly where you are tuned at every moment of the day. That tool is your feelings. Think of your emotions as the numbers on a radio dial. At the very bottom of the dial, you have the low-frequency stations: fear, grief, despair, powerlessness. When you feel these things, you are on the lowest possible vibration. It is very hard to manifest anything good from here because you are out of tune with the abundance of the universe. As you turn the dial up, you find anger, blame, worry. These feel stronger than despair, but they are still static stations. They don't create beautiful crystals. In the middle of the dial, you have boredom, contentment, hopefulness. This is where the music starts to get clear. When you are hopeful, you are finally in the receiving range. At the very top of the dial, you have the high vibe stations: enthusiasm, joy, love, gratitude. When you are in a state of true gratitude, you are vibrating at the same frequency as the stars. This is the Tesla resonance of the human soul. When you stay on this station, the things you want don't just come to you. They are pulled toward you with the power of 1,000 magnets. The mistake most people make is trying to jump from despair to joy in 1 second. That's like trying to turn a radio dial so fast the knob breaks off. You don't have to be perfectly happy all the time. You just have to reach for a feeling that is slightly better than the one you have right now. If you are angry, try to reach for boredom. It's a step up. If you are bored, try to reach for hope. Each small shift changes your frequency. Each small shift changes what you notice in the world around you. Your first step into resonance. The reason most people fail at manifestation is that they focus on the thing they want instead of the vibration of the thing. They say, I want a new car, but they think about the car from a place of, I don't have a car and I hate taking the bus. Their frequency is set to hate and lack. Because they are tuned to the lack station, the universe just gives them more things to feel lack about. If you want to change your reality, you must start by matching the frequency of the result before the result actually shows up. You have to find the feeling of the new car while you are still sitting on the bus. You have to find the feeling of the soulmate while you are still eating dinner alone. This sounds like a trick, but it is the law of the universe. The vibration must come first. The physical world is just an echo of the energy you have already sent out. As Elena sat on the bus that morning, she didn't have her new job yet. She didn't have her debt paid off. But by humming that song and looking at that art poster, she had changed her station. She had stopped being a victim of the weather and started being the one who controlled the dial. She felt a strange sense of power. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting for the world to change so she could feel better. She was changing her feeling so the world would have no choice but to follow her. But there was a problem. Even though she knew how to turn the dial, she found that her hand kept slipping. Old habits, old fears, and the voices of people around her kept trying to turn the radio back to the doom and gloom show. She realized that knowing about frequency was only the beginning. To really change her life, she needed something more than just a better mood. She needed a structure. She needed a way to keep her radio locked onto the right station, even when the wind of life tried to blow her off course. She needed to understand the 3 pillars that hold the frequency in place. She was just a singer, hitting a high note once, and then losing her voice. With them, she could become like Tesla, powerful enough to move mountains. What are these 3 pillars, and why is it impossible to manifest anything without all 3 of them working together? That is the secret that separates the people who wish from the people who receive. Chapter 2. 3 Pillars of Vibrational Frequency. In 1901, J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in the world, signed a check that changed history. The amount was $480 million. In today's money, that is worth more than $15 billion. He handed that check to a small white-haired man named Andrew Carnegie. As the banker looked at the man who had just sold his massive steel empire, he said, "Congratulations, Mr. Carnegie. You are now the richest man in the world." Most people think Carnegie got that check because he was a genius at making steel. They think he must have been the smartest chemist or the hardest-working engineer in Pennsylvania. But they are wrong. Carnegie himself admitted he didn't know much about the actual work of making steel. He couldn't do the math as well as his accountants. He didn't understand the chemistry as well as his lab workers. He wasn't the strongest man in the mills. He had something else. He had a mental master key that allowed him to command the world around him. He didn't just work hard. He tuned his mind to a specific frequency and stayed there until the physical world had no choice but to match him. He knew that success wasn't a lottery. It was a result of 3 specific pillars that held up his entire life. Without these 3 pillars, all the hard work in the world would have left him just another tired worker in the soot of Pittsburgh. The secret in the smoke. Long before he was the richest man on earth, Carnegie sat in a dark, smoky office in Pittsburgh. He was surrounded by 50 men. These were his managers and leaders. Many of them were older than him. Many were better educated. Some were even smarter by traditional standards. Yet they all looked to him for the path forward. Carnegie realized something during these meetings. When these 50 men sat in a room and focused on a single goal, something strange happened. It was as if a third mind entered the room. He called this the mastermind principle. He noticed that if the group stayed focused, felt the excitement of the goal, and had total faith it would happen, the solutions appeared out of thin air. He wasn't just managing people. He was managing focus. This is the first pillar of vibrational frequency. Most people live their lives like a flashlight with dying batteries. Their thoughts are scattered. They think about their debt for 10 minutes, then their lunch for 5 minutes, than a mean comment someone made on the bus for 20 minutes. Their energy is spread so thin that it never gets hot enough to change anything. Carnegie's mind was different. He used